and welcome to Dollars Making Sense, a weekly show about finance, money and investing. I'm your host, Ray Treverson from OTG Capital. This show is proudly sponsored by OTG Capital. We are a private credit provider and we have a wholesale fund out in the marketplace today, otgcapital.com.au. That's the paid bit over and done with. We are a weekly educational show that we push out through Radio Northern Beaches, here locally on the Sydney's Northern Beaches, and around Australia on the Community Radio Network, compliments of the Community Broadcasting Association of Australia. We are currently out to about 15 plus community radio stations, pretty well across every state in Australia. So thank you very kindly for listening. We really appreciate our regional listeners, and we do occasionally get emails. So please keep sending those in. I'm really pleased today to welcome back to the microphone and camera Lisa Saliba from MetLife. She is the Chief Marketing Communications and Customer Officer at MetLife. I know that's a heck of a mouthful, but I guess when you think about it, Lena, you are the person that I guess controls the message out to the populace on behalf of MetLife. That's pretty accurate?
That makes me sound really important. Yeah, I like it. Let's go with that one. That works. Why
Wonderful.
not?
Wonderful. So look, we previously had you on the show when we were talking about an incredibly important show, incredibly important topic about menopause and perimenopause. And I really want people, if you haven't heard that show, please go back and have a listen to it. I think it's really vitally important, particularly for men. Okay, go and have a listen to that. But today, we're going to talk about something that we've actually had on the show before, but it never hurts to go back over it, because it's important to know that this particular offering is out in the marketplace quite generally. And we're talking today about life insurance inside superannuation. Now, Lena, I guess from the perspective of MetLife, can you give the audience a bit of a view of how MetLife is involved in this part of the industry and life insurance within super?
Yeah, of course. I'm going to start with what my role is. My role is, part of my role is really thinking about what is it that consumers or customers actually need and what actually matters for them. And life insurance is confusing. To be honest, superannuation is confusing as well for some people. So my role is all about how do you make it easier. Now, what people might not realize is that life insurance is available to them in their superannuation, or they can purchase it, through an advisor, or it might be offered to them through their workplace, through their employer. But I'm going to specifically talk about it being offered within their superannuation. So, I guess for me, it's the opportunity is to encourage people to go and have a look at what is available to them in their superannuation, and then make an informed decision or choice on what do they actually need to cover them for the stage of life that they're at.
Okay. Now, I guess I think you've hit on a very good point about people's understanding about superannuation. Now, it often surprises me, given that compulsory super, has been around since the early 90s. And I've got 3 adult children, and they get their yearly superannuation statements, which they dutifully ignore. And then they get berated by their father, particularly given my career in finance these days. I make sure that they actually read their statements. But I guess from that perspective, the publicly generally, would I be correct in saying they don't fully comprehend what's inside their super fund and what it can actually do?
Oh, you're spot on. All the research we've done shows us that a large portion of the population, first of all, don't understand that it's available to them through their super, or if they do know it's there, they don't actually understand what it covers them for. So, many people will just keep their default and not go in and actually look at, well, is it sufficient to cover me if hopefully nothing awful happens, but if something does happen and I can't work or my partner can't work, can we actually survive can we afford to live on what we've got left? So it's quite surprising how many people don't quite understand that. Our focus has been on how do you simplify that messaging as much as possible? And we work closely with our super funds to do that so that somebody can go in and have a look at their insurance and then just make that informed decision based on what their needs are and where they are in life.
Well, I'm an ex-military dude, and KISS principle I love. Keep it simple, stupid. So let's talk absolute basics. When we're talking about insurance inside super, what are the components that make that up?
Yeah, so if I keep, I mean, I'm not trying to give anybody advice, but there are three types of super that's available to you throughout your super. Sorry, three types of insurance. Yeah. So there's what you might call, let's just call it death cover. And so this pays a lump sum if somebody passes away. So, people will find that this might be offered as a default to you through your superannuation. It's also, you could also get a payment if you are terminally ill. Now, that's an awful situation to think about, but if you are told by your doctors that you have a limited time left, then you could actually get a lump sum payment as well. The second type of insurance is total and permanent disability, often referred to as TPD. And this is also a lump sum payment, but it's if you're injured or you have an illness and you're not going to be able to go back to work. So, it's a pretty drastic illness or injury, and, you have tried all these treatments or whatever it may be, and you're just not going to be able to go back to work. So that's also a lump sum. And then the last one is, you'll often talked about as income protection. So this is to protect you against those instances where I'm going to be off work, but there's a limited time. And, I'm going to take you to as basic as possible. I've broken my leg and I do a job that requires me to be able to move or drive, and I can't. So I know I'm going to be off for 2-3 months, whatever it may be. And so there's a payment coming in on a regular basis to cover you during that period of time, because it's unlikely you're going to have that amount of sick leave. So they're the key types of insurance that you can actually source or review as part of your superannuation.
Okay, so in essence, just a quick recap, you've got basic death cover, which is for dying or permanent, if you have a terminal illness. You have TPD, total permanent disability, and then income protection if you can't work. Okay, now, I guess one of the things that, there's been a bit of legislation passed in recent years around this is, why is it included by default?
So, when you think about the reason you have superannuation, it's to help secure your financial security when you decide to retire. What is becoming, I guess, more and more obvious is things happen in life and you may have to stop working sooner, which doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have enough in your retirement. So insurance wasn't as a way to bridge that gap, to make sure that if you had to stop working for whatever reason, you still had the financial stability that you needed until you were ready to technically retire. It was also a symptom of, as a culture, or, as Australians, we're generally underinsured when it comes to our life insurance. So this was the way to help provide that support to people who wouldn't think to actually go and get it because the awareness was so low.
I guess one of the staggering figures here, when you think about it, it's estimated that almost 9 million people have insurance inside super, but if they didn't have it, they wouldn't have it at all. Is that your view of it as well?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And what's interesting in that stat is even when people do have it, there's a large portion that don't either know that they have it, but they do have it, or they don't actually understand what it's covering them for.
I think it's also important for people to understand, because, when you think about the very large superannuation funds, and, we're talking, ladies and gentlemen, of trillions of dollars these days. These are big, big organizations. And when you think about the life insurance component that's there, there's a real scale of economy. And I guess I'd be right in saying, Lena, that the life cover that's provided within super is probably very cost effective. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. It is very, very cost effective, because when you think about it, our customer is the super fund, so we work directly with them. It's tailored to who their members are. So it's definitely more cost effective than if I potentially would go get advice. But in saying that, it is default. So, we do always, and I know the super funds do this as well, they will talk to their members about it might not be enough for you. on where you are with your life and the lifestyle you have. So, I know the super funds do offer for services like advice. Their members can go talk to advisors to make sure they've got the right level of cover. But the way I look at it is it's better than nothing. And in some instances it will be enough, but not in all instances, I don't think.
And I think you've really highlighted a very important point that, at the base level, it is a one-size-fits-all type of scenario. And we've been in the finance industry, for a long, long time. We know that that's not always the case. One size doesn't always fit all. But I think you make a really good point that it's a good starting point to have that conversation. So look, we're about half time. You're here on Dollars and Making Sense, a weekly show about finance, money and investing. I'm your host, Ray Treverson. And with me at the microphone is Lisa Saliba. She's from MetLife. We're going to take a short break and we'll be back with you in just a moment. Hi, and thank you for listening to Dollars and Making Sense, a weekly radio program about finance, money and investing on Radio Northern Beaches and nationally on the Community Radio Network around Australia. The views, comments and opinions aired during our program should not be construed or viewed as financial advice. Any commentary is general advice only and does not take into account your objectives, financial situation or needs. You should consider whether the advice is suitable for you and your personal circumstances. If in doubt, you should contact an authorised licensed financial planner. We welcome questions and feedback, and you can get in touch with us via our blog, social media channels or email. Please search for Dollars and Making Sense in your favourite podcast platform or check out our blog at otgcapital.com.au/blog. Hi, and welcome back to Dollars and Making Sense, a weekly show about finance, money and investing. I'm your host, Ray Treverson. I'm really pleased to have at the microphone this week, Lisa Saliba. She is with MetLife and she's been on the show before. And I'm just going to mention it again. We had this wonderful show about menopause. Ladies and gentlemen, please go and have a listen to it. It's really, really important. Today's topic, equally as important, we're talking about life insurance within superannuation. Now, Lena, before we went to the show, we went to our break, we were talking about the three components being death cover, total disability, TPD, and income protection. So I guess when you look at it, that's quite a lot of cover that you're talking about there. So who is eligible to get this insurance when you're talking about super, like life insurance within super? Who is eligible?
Well, in most cases, default insurance generally starts when you hit the great age of 25. So 25 and all years older, I know, remember those days, the good old days? Or, think back, and you have at least $6,000 in your super account. And your account is actively receiving contributions. So you're 25, I've got $6,000 in my super, and I've got money coming in on a regular basis. So then you will have default insurance applied. If you don't meet these conditions, though, you may still be able to opt in. It really depends on what your super fund rules are. So, we always encourage people to check. So I guess for me, the key messaging is we should never assume, and, as we try and build awareness, we do encourage people to check your account and speak to your super fund. And make sure that you're covered for what you think is adequate for you at that point in your life. And it's really, it's an opportunity for people to think about, well, if the terrible happens, am I going to be okay? Is my family going to be okay? Are my loved ones going to be okay? And I know I keep saying it, but it's really just making an informed decision for that point in time in your life, because, your life will change and you will need different types of insurance, but it is really just checking what is right for you at that point.
And I guess when you consider the kind of options that we've talked about, they are a lot of the times very occupation related. So there are people out there, and I know, in my local area up in the Northern Beaches, there's a lot of tradies that are around. They're working in construction sites. They are, by their very nature, they tend to be a more dangerous work environment than those of us that are slaving away behind keypads and hitting our keyboards very, very hard and clicking our mouses so savagely. I mean, my finger, oh my God, And so I think everybody's got to look at their different circumstances. So I think you've made a very, very good point there. So when you're talking about this, so how does the whole process work? So, somebody's got their super because it's compulsory, so it's happening. So how does this actually operate?
It's actually automatically deducted from their super fund balance. The super fund manages all of that for them. The premium is deducted on a regular basis, and then they can track that through any statements that the fund sends them, or through their account online.
Now, we've talked a lot about a one size fits all, but we all know that that's never the case. Okay, everyone's different. We all have different requirements. We all have different jobs. We all do different things, and so what do you need to do if you need to change? Can you change your cover?
Yeah, look, the super funds will allow you to modify your cover. And, we really, and I keep going back to making a decision based on what is right, what cover you need for that particular point in your life. So, when you're 25, it's a very different landscape to, when you get close to 30 and you're thinking you're settling down, or you might have had children, or you buy your first property and your needs really change. So we try and look at, well, how do you make it as easy as possible for me to realize I need to go in and make a change? And then when I do need to make a change, there's a number of tools available. So, the super funds, and I don't want to speak on their behalf, but it's a general rule of thumb, will have a calculator available to their members. So, once again, that's in the attempt to try and simplify it for you as much as possible. So I can go in there and I can put in some basic information, and then that calculator will help me work out, well, where do I need to modify my cover? What do I need to increase? What do I need to decrease based on where I'm at in my life at the moment? And so once I've worked through that calculator, most super funds, so all of our super funds, have a digital platform where I can actually go in and make those changes. It's normally a pretty simple process. Sometimes it goes straight through. Digitally, an underwriter might need to ask some more questions to assess your application, but most of it is managed digitally through the super funds account, online account.
Now, I guess when we're talking about life cover, I guess the biggest factor is always going to be someone's health. Does life insurance inside super require health checks?
In some instances, but I want to make sure I don't talk about, advice, but, depending on what information you give us, we might ask you to go and get some more information or to do some sort of health check. But a large portion will go through straight away, like they'll just be automatically processed. But there is a portion that we will, and every insurer will refer to an underwriter. And some of them might just be some more questions we ask. Some may be, we'll need you to go get some medical checks done.
Now, as we've been talking a lot about in the second half of the show, is that, one size doesn't fit all. And so when we're thinking about that and adjusting cover, you use a really interesting term, life events. So I normally tell my kids, read your yearly statement. That's a great time to sit down and do a bit of a review. And given my kids are late 20s, early 30s, they're still not married or doing anything major. But, certainly in my day, people were getting married a bit earlier, a whole range of different circumstances. But
yeah.
What kind of life events do you believe people really should stop, have a really good hard look at what's happening in their super fund and life cover?
That's a really good question, but let me just say, well done in getting your children to read the statement. My son is just turned 21. I can't even get him to open it. So well done, you're ahead of me. So good for you. We've sort of touched on this before. A lot of what we do is based on research. It's not gut feel or anecdotal. So we've done a lot of research about what are those moments. And so, we've used multiple sources of data, but it's things like when I decide to buy a home, when I decide to have children, when I'm getting married, or I'm separating, or I'm changing jobs. We see these as the key moments. And what we've also seen is some of these key moments happen around when you turn 30. It's like, I don't know what happens to us. We go, I better get serious about life. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. So, around that time, but we start to see people doing something that gets them to the point where I'm thinking about, well, where is my future? But there's some of the key changes. And what we find is people don't generally know that they're key moments in their lives. And, I should be thinking about, well, do I have enough cover if something happens to me? So we do encourage our funds to engage with their members, to talk about what are these key moments. But one of the other things we do is we look at how can we help our super funds proactively go out to somebody. Like if I'm coming up to 30, that was many years ago for me, unfortunately, but some of our super funds will send, you're meant to say, obviously you don't look a day over 30, right?
You took my thunder away from me. What can I say?
And so, some of our super funds will actually send something out to a member to help them make that informed decision. Because if we go back to, it's very confusing. Like it is, as much as we try and simplify it, it's not something that you want to think about. Nobody wants to think about, well, something awful could happen in my life and I need to prepare for it. And it's especially in the Australian culture, because when we compare to what other cultures are doing, we don't like to think about it. And so it's not an easy conversation to raise. So we do try and look at how can you give that little nudge to go, well, maybe now's the time because of this is what's happening. And do you feel like you're protected? But so, there are a number of those milestones, but all around age 30.
Yeah, it's a fascinating time. And yes, you don't look a day over. I'm not even going to go near that
Thank
one.
you, Ray.
Anytime. Now, it's interesting, the life events feature, which allows people to increase cover. Now, one of the things that, we've now, there's been a lot of change in the superannuation laws. We've now got payday super coming in from the 1st of July. We've got super now at 12%. And believe me, I have a lot of overseas friends that, people look at our superannuation system and we are the envy of the world because we are setting ourselves up now to be able to retire correctly. Life insurance inside super is a really important factor that provides, I think you've covered this off really, really well. So as a wrap up to today's show, there's a few key checkpoints here. What should people be doing next?
Actually check what you're covered for. Don't leave it as
you mean read the statement? Read the statement.
Read
the
statement. Yes, read the statement. Go online. I know. Use the calculators. Don't. What's really unfortunate, Ray? I've seen too many, and I know I'm not unique in this way. I've seen too many scenarios where somebody didn't do that, and then they've come to claim, and because something awful's happened, and they don't have the sufficient cover. Like those sort of stories don't leave you. You can't move past those. So I encourage people to just check what cover you have. You might actually have too much. I don't know, but make sure that you have enough cover and the right cover to actually make sure that you can actually live, comfortably for as long as you want to. Just don't forget about it. Don't think about, oh, it's not today's problem, it's tomorrow's. Actually take the time to go and check and use all the tools that are available to you.
And I might add, ladies and gentlemen, there are so many of these tools online. I know MetLife, you are no different to many other providers in that space. And some of the quick things that I would advise people to have a listen to and make sure they check. Occupation ratings are very, very important when it comes to income protection. Also, again, these are very, very reasonably priced policies because of the fact that it's within very, very large superannuation funds. Lisa Saliba, it's been a real pleasure having you back on the show again. I know I'd love to have you back on the show because we can talk about our kids and our age and all that other stuff in between some good product stuff as well.
Sounds good.
Sounds good. But look, it's always informative to talk about super. It's this wonderful thing that we've got. I think we should keep talking about it because it's one of the best things about this country. Lisa Saliba from MetLife, thank you for being on Dollars and Making Sense.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time, Ray.
Have a great one. Until next time.